Thank you so much, Meg. Hi, everyone. Super excited to be a part of this discussion today. We're excited as an organization, ServiceNow, to be part of Power to Fly Summit. To introduce myself, my name is Surbhi. I am the Global DEI Business Partner and APJ DEI Lead at ServiceNow. My pronouns are she and her. I am personally very invested in future of work because as a part of my job, I get the opportunity to work with key business leaders across our organization on their diversity goals and ensuring that our organization enterprise-wide diversity strategy is being aligned to. The future, the present, the past of work all contributes to us building an amazing culture in the workplace. And so the future of work is something that I am particularly very interested in. Now, before I introduce you to my peers who will be joining me for this conversation, I wanted to take a moment and share a little bit about our organization, ServiceNow. ServiceNow was founded in 2004 by Fred Luddy to help employees and organizations seamlessly work through digital workflows. If you take a moment and think about your daily tasks as workflows, employee onboarding, scheduling a doctor's appointment through an online portal, or even ordering your favorite takeout online through your mobile app, these processes are all built on workflows and they spur innovation, making the world work better for everyone. And these are just a few examples of how ServiceNow as an organization supports 80% of Fortune 500 companies. To name a few, Starbucks, Delta Airlines, Overstock, Wayfair, the NBA, WNBA. Our India Development Center has seen significant growth, tripling our employee base in almost the last 2 years. It's our second largest global center and based on customer proximity. And today's session will focus on how right now is one of the best times to break into tech. We're going to be talking about with Puneet and Nishar on what the future of work and hybrid work looks like for women, the power of our ServiceNow platform, how AI is changing skill demands, and of course, open to all of your questions as well. If you're looking to meet more amazing ServiceNow colleagues and find out more information about open roles that we're hiring for, I would highly encourage that you visit our virtual career booth as well. But first, before we get started, let me introduce my panelists to you. We're joined today by Nishar Fatima and Puneet Haldipur. Nishar is part of our workplace strategy team. She's an enthusiastic global citizen with a diverse range of roles under her belt as an architect, workplace strategist, artist, and volunteer. In her current position at ServiceNow, she leads the global workplace strategy, dedicated to maximizing employee engagement, optimizing processes and spaces, and leveraging the power of technology and AI to improve the performance of our services, systems, and real estate portfolio. I'm also joined by Puneet Haldipur. Puneet is our Senior Manager of Data and Analytics. She's a business leader with over 18 years of rich experience in leveraging data and analytics to drive decision-making and competitive advantage in sales, finance, and operations. In her current position at ServiceNow, she leads the sales and partner analytics team that is focused on providing data and insights into our business and is also the Bangalore lead of the digital technology organization. Nishar and Puneet, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation with me. I'm so excited to pick your brain on all things future of work and hybrid work. I went through a study while I was prepping for this session. There was a study that was published, particularly for tech in India, which said that India contributes nearly 31.4% of the world's total STEM graduates and is quickly cementing its position as one of the largest STEM job marketplaces in the world. And women are such an integral part of this growth story for India. There seems to be a concentrated effort to attract and retain women, in particular, across the industry. In fact, 62% of employers intend to hire more women in STEM in the upcoming financial year, and 38% of employers plan to increase their STEM women's representation by up to 20%. Puneet, I want to hear from you. Why, in your opinion, is this a great time to be a woman in tech, particularly in India?
Thank you, Surbhi, for that. Good morning, good evening to everyone. I'm going to answer that question with just repeating the stats that you just called out, Surbhi. Why is it a good time for women in tech, particularly in India? like you said, there are 62% of employers that intend to hire more STEM graduates in 23-24. Now that just shows a lot of focus. Additionally, you also mentioned that 38% plan to increase their women representation by up to 20%. Both of these stats, if I just focus for 2 seconds on these, right, they really show that there is a focus to improve representation in job hiring. But as I went through, like while I was studying and trying to get, prep for this session, there were 2 other things that I came across that I want to kind of highlight in terms of why is it a good time, right, for women in tech in India. The companies that are actually aiding women in, building their skills, or upskilling, or, updating their technical skills is the highest in India compared to anywhere else in the world. So just the focus on just upskilling and, updating your skills, the fact that there is focus on that just shows that, there is an intent to bring in the women workforce into the tech industry, right? And the other one that I'm going to call out is, if you look at women who work in these companies, right, like myself, you, Nishar, all of us, right, the stats that have come out indicate very clearly that women like us believe that companies like ServiceNow and others in the industry actually promote enough and more, representation, education. So even this stat, right, the percentage of women in India who think their company does not hire or promote enough is very, very less compared to our global average. So actually, what we're saying is that women also believe that we're promoting enough and doing enough. Do we need to do more? Maybe yes, we do need to do more, and we need to continue to do this. And I'll tell you why I think we need to continue doing this, right? When you think of, women taking a break, for whatever reason, whether it's maternity, a job change, taking just general break, you always have this feeling that you're going to come back and there's going to be an impact, and, it's going to, maybe you're going to, go back a few years. And therefore, the focus on just, promoting, upskilling, bringing back this workforce is really, really important. That is some of my reasons why I believe that it's really, really a good time to be in the tech, being a woman in tech. And what really is exciting is it's not just, an engineering role that you can come back to when you're thinking tech, right? There is a ton of other roles. Like I belong to analytics, there's product management, program management. So there's a lot of options for women to come back to. You don't necessarily have to be an engineer to come back to tech or to pursue a career in tech. And I'm just going to close that by actually saying that I truly believe that, it's these companies that are actually focused, these companies that are looking to, tap into this talent are the ones that are going to really, really grow and thrive, because you have to have the right intent and the focus to make sure that you have enough and more women representation within the workforce.
Absolutely. And I think a very brilliant point, Puneet, that you brought up, companies being more vocal about where they intend to harvest this talent in tech, particularly among women, makes it that much more tangible. It makes it that much more of an important aspect in the way that they run their business. And the talent out there is receptive to it. They see it, they understand it, and like you said, they're willing to do their share of the hard work as well to meet in the middle. There was a survey that was run among women professionals in India. It was conducted by CIEL HR Services. Over 90% of women said that they wanted either a hybrid policy or the option to work fully remotely. And like you rightly mentioned, Puneet, there is so much opportunity for women in the tech space. But Puneet, Nishar, I want to pull you in here and understand, how are these future of work strategies that we've started to craft, which also encompasses hybrid work, how is it that these are influencing the ability of women to seamlessly integrate into the workforce? And companies that adopt these future of work strategies, which are inclusive, how can these make or break the kind of potential that women in tech in the workforce can see?
Absolutely. Firstly, I want to start by saying that I'm extremely humbled to have this opportunity to share my thoughts on such an amazing platform and to be with you both, obviously. But I want to start by reiterating what you both just said, right? There couldn't be a better time to be in the world of tech. And I would take it notch further to say in the history of employment for women in our generation, right? This kind of time has never come before. And I'm focusing more on post-pandemic kind of a period where the hybrid has elevated. But I feel that there are not only highest level of opportunities right now, but an increased level of flexibility, which is best of both worlds for us, right? And this is the time we want to take it and put it out of the park as much as we can. So just to bring it in terms of perspective for ServiceNow and kind of give you a macro understanding, in March 2020, when the pandemic broke down, we were about 11,000 employees roughly, right? Today, we are hitting 21,000 employees. That is literally doubling our organization in last 3 years, if you speak, right? And that to me says that and especially India team accounts for about 15% of our technological folks or workforce. And what I'm most proud about is that out of those 15%, 40% of the talent is women. Like yourself and me and all of us, right? That's so amazing to see that. And having said that, the kind of growth, the scalability challenges and uncertainty which comes our way with that kind of a growth requires a solid, thoughtful, smart strategies, right? So our future of work strategies predominantly revolves around how and where people can do their work best. We are not, we don't have a mandate that 100% workforce should come to the office. No, because we want people to do their best work where they can do their best work. And to create these strategies, there's highest level of cross-functional collaboration between our workplace services team, people team. I mean, yourselves will be your team, Puneet's team. We all work together in tandem from technological side, people side, to make sure that we are seamlessly thinking about the workforce and workplace, which in a way, basically, to me is what, who, and where we do our best work, right? So I would say we are constantly evolving our true hybrid work model as well. We don't have the North Star, right? We are learning as we go as well. But from the workplace strategy perspective, particularly, I would say that we are focusing on the 3C strategy, which is connect, community, and culture, right? And basing our strategy on these three things to increase our employee engagement and also enhance the culture of ServiceNow per se. So the most important part of all is we are mindful of having the global approach, which I like to call it, which is global, but yet local in many which ways. And that kind of brings out the strategies of, like, if we are talking about women especially, how are women working? What is their way of working? What are the cultural nuances of India in this context, right? And then try to put together the strategies around that. And a very important thing is, I would also like to focus on the geographical bit a little bit, that in different geographies, if you look at how post-pandemic has shaped our work culture, we have learned that post-pandemic in India was very unique, right? Right after the pandemic or in pandemic, the work culture was very, very unique. And if we look at these average square foot home sizes, in North America, the average would be roughly around 1,700 to 2,000 square feet, which is pretty lavish. But in India, we did not have that luxury. The average home sizes were 500 to 800 square feet. And not to mention, there are multi-generational families living under the same roof, to your grandparents, to your children's running around in the same space where you're doing your best work, right? But the best part was the human race are very adaptive to change and very quickly learn to evolve in such way of working. And women especially, I would like to give kudos to all the women who have grown in this situation and thrive, not only grown, right? But the idea is to let's hit it out of the park, take it notch further and develop and invest in our skills ourselves, create and focus on personal branding, which is very, very important also in these days. So where I'm going with this is, as a women especially, we have not only learned to thrive in this flexibility, but appreciate the hybrid way of working, right? And our future of work strategy should align with that. I'll just end it with one quick note on this question is, I was reading the article from McKinsey last month, and it says that we are in the age of automation, right? And women across the worldwide accounts for about 24% of those currently employed, right? And if we really take advantage of this transition phase per se, which we are in, we would be having the highest employment in the coming years or in the coming time, right? So as ServiceNow, we are expecting the number of women in technology also will go higher for us, both in India as well as global, and hence future of work strategies will also evolve accordingly.
Absolutely. I think you got it spot on, Nisha. The profile of the talent that we onboard has changed dramatically because of the pandemic. We've all learned, I think, when we talk about women and in general, we've all learned so much from the pandemic. There's been a lot of unlearning and relearning also that's happened because of such a sudden shift in the way that we were working. And it totally makes absolute sense for us to align what we're doing from a future of work perspective to what this new talent profile looks like. So I think really nice point that you brought up, Nishar. There's a lot of learning, unlearning that we're talking about, but ServiceNow has got a very rich history of innovation, customer service, learning from what our customers talk, what do they need, having a close eye on what are the market trends and how they develop and impact our customers, which have been key aspects of our growth story so far. Puneet, you are a leader in the data and analytics space, and you're very much privy to the fact that our ServiceNow platform is like no other. It's a very powerful. Can you share with those who have tuned into this conversation, where does the power of the platform come from, and why do you think it's a game changer in the digital transformation space?
Okay, that's a great question. Thanks, Ruby. So the list would just be endless if I went to talk about our platform because of the experience I've had. But I'm going to focus on one, and then I'm going to focus on my personal experience as well as an employee at ServiceNow. The reason why I believe that our platform is like no other and it's a game changer in the digital transformation is just like a large aspect of it is because we're enterprise. We don't take just one aspect of your business to say, hey, let's workflow this or let's digitize this, right? We can operate in every stream of your process. Like Surabhi mentioned at the beginning, if you think of any process that exists in your organization, any automation of that process to a large degree is something that ServiceNow is capable of doing, and in various departments. So if you think about it, we're actually breaking silos. Information from one area can be accessed by folks in the other area. And the fact that we're enterprise and we can connect and drive visibility and drive that, just break those silos down, is why I believe that it's truly a game changer, because a lot of us look at focusing on one particular area. Maybe, we want to try and automate one aspect, but to do something at an enterprise level is just such a game changer. To me, when I'm thinking digital transformation or digitizing something, it's not about, taking a technology and saying, hey, I will just implement this technology and this is new and I will, focus and just implement it and I'm done, right? It's really about, when you're thinking digital transformation, you have to look at the aspect of, how do employees do business? What is the experience that this particular, automation, innovation, implementation has impacted, right? How is the person in the center of it all being impacted? And I think ServiceNow being enterprise, keeping people in the center of it all, is why I really believe that it's technology and people together that's coming together to form this really, really strong technology and strong platform that we have. And with that, I'm going to talk about my one experience. I joined ServiceNow just as we broke, I just got the offer, like I was asked to join ServiceNow, and we broke into this pandemic. We shifted and moved into working from home. But my entire onboarding, because we were already in that space where we were saying, let's not get into, workspaces just yet. We didn't really shift to complete working from home, but we were in that space where we're being cautious. My entire onboarding actually took place really smoothly. Like, I didn't have to get into the office to find out what learning I had to do, when I'm going to get my machinery, what is my next steps. So everything for me was just really, really smooth. And actually helped me just get onboarded with, with a feeling of belonging, right? I mean, and I think just the ability to do that, because I spent the first 2 years of my journey at ServiceNow being, joined as in the pandemic. So I really didn't have didn't go to the office, didn't meet anyone. But the belonging that it created with just saying, this is your onboarding experience, this is your learning, this is the platform that we're going to provide you with. It just made my entire experience so there was it had an impact on my experience and my belongingness and all of that, with the organization. And I think that is really key, right? So you can think of technology, but it needs to have an impact. It needs to have an experience that a person engaging with that technology has. And I think that's what ServiceNow does really, really well. So great technology, but keeping people in the center. And that for me is just the reason really why, for me, that it's really, really powerful, right? Because you can experience that technology as an employee, as a human being yourself.
Absolutely. And the power of people, Puneet, like you said, it rallied us together during the pandemic. It helped us get through this massive event that all of us were going through in various measures. And I think it is the root of all of the experience that you mentioned. At the end of the day, it's about how things make you feel when you're going through it, when you're doing it. And we need to learn how to harness the power of technology to influence those experiences and make them world class. And I think, like you mentioned, it's a perfect intersection with the ServiceNow platform. Speaking of transformative technology like our ServiceNow platform, the metaverse is something that I think we've all heard of. Tech giants like Microsoft, NVIDIA, Meta are building that infrastructure to create better virtual worlds that are more closely mimicking our physical life. Nishad, I want to understand from you, how has ServiceNow been exploring the metaverse? And why is your role as a workplace strategist and an ally for gender equity very critical to this project?
Absolutely. I think where, like I mentioned earlier, right, workplace services for us is in the business of experience. We are no more just building physical spaces, right? We are building experiences. And while the in-person space gives you a great place of destination to stop by, meet your colleague, and carry through those C3 strategies of connect, build a community, and build a culture, we found increased need of exploring one more technology if there is available, right? So it wasn't like when it comes to metaverse, the thought wasn't that let's explore yet another cool technology and ride the bandwagon of everybody exploring metaverse. It really was intentional, and began with an intention when we looked at our employee journey maps and understood how employee personas are being divided, right? And the way they work. And we understood that the workforce, our physical office, helps create the place of destination, and it can never be replaced by any other tool, right? We can't underestimate the power of coming together in person, but at the same time, not to ignore that our workforce, almost 1/3 of our workforce is hybrid, which is remote persona. And they come to office or they come to our workplaces for moments that matter, which is not on everyday basis, right? So we are pushing the threshold to think alternate ways of collaborating. And that's where the metaverse came into the conversation. And the idea is to never replace the metaverse with any in-person with any kind of a metaverse experience, but it's to provide an alternative ways to collaborate other than the legacy tools like Zoom and Slacks and Teams we are using today. So like Puneet, I'll share a personal story as well. When I came on board, I'm a pandemic hire for ServiceNow as well. And I knew my colleagues from before through relationships, so that was a little bit easier. But when I really felt like I'm part of this community and I'm part of my team, is we explored when I had never met them in person, and we explored one of the early pilots in a smaller group with Metaverse. And we had moments that matter where we virtually met together and had marshmallow moments by the fire and had a chit chat and played games in the virtual environment. And after that, I felt like I really actually met my colleague in person for the first time. And that kind of made me think, like, if I'm feeling like this, our organization, half of them have never met each other because they were pandemic hire. Like I mentioned earlier, right? We are growing so rapidly that we were pandemic hire. So how about exploring yet another tool to see if we could increase the level of connection between employees and kind of boost that interpersonal connection? So that's really where the idea was born, to explore this tool. And if I talk about the pilot itself, it was really to bridge that gap between remote and flexible employees who are hybridly working. And especially, like we spoke about earlier, right? Women prefer the hybrid way of working, remote way of working. So we want to make sure that we are not ignoring that workforce altogether. So I was very pleased to see that 55% of our total participants actually were women participants, more than even the other half. And that really helped me gauge that, okay, I'll get varied perspective, right, from the pilot results perspective. And as we spoke earlier, women were they prefer the hybrid way of working and could take advantage of such technology to build that connection. So we explored a bunch of use cases like water cooler chats to create those informal moments or informal collisions between the colleagues. Then we had scenarios where we were playing virtual scavenger hunt and it became competitive in the virtual world. We did team meetings and stuff like that as well in more of a work forum. But the idea was to see how our teams are adopting this new way of working. The participation actually was 94% from the interest level, which I thought was amazing. And especially you are working in the technology company, you want to explore newer technology, but we are always mindful that we don't want to over automize everything or over engineer anything before we optimize it, right? So I would say we are still in the transition where we are figuring it out if this is the right tool for us and which are the use cases which should really bring value out of this tool. So if I could share like 3 learnings or highlights from our pilot. 1 in 3 users actually said that Metaverse strengthened their interpersonal connection and relationship with their colleagues. And this is a post-pilot survey results I'm actually sharing with you. 43% users said that they had greater experience or equitable experience when they met in the Metaverse. Compared to the legacy tools we do in Zooms and Teams and Slacks and all of that. And about half of them that they would recommend this tool to their friends and colleagues. So it was really, I felt like we got a good feedback and there was a lot more feedback, obviously with the time restrictions. I won't share it all, but I wanted to share the highlights of pilot results.
Absolutely. I think virtual marshmallows around the fire sounds amazing, but congratulations on such a successful pilot. I know a lot of AI and metaverse and all of this is still work in progress because we're figuring out how much of this we can leverage. But I think one thing that stands out from, Nishad, what you mentioned is the minute the playing field is leveled, I think there's an increased level of empathy, there's an increased level of awareness and a willingness to accommodate for other people. We saw it during the pandemic. I think that was the biggest leveler of the playing field where everybody was going through the same thing. And it translates to your pilot of the metaverse as well. It's a new concept for everyone. We're all coming into it, from ground zero. And so our ability to find more equitable interactions, to build those networks is that much more enhanced. Some super exciting work, Nishar. Congratulations on that pilot. With so much technological innovation, I think artificial intelligence is another topic that comes to mind. There has been a conscious digital revolution across India that was spurred in part by the pandemic. In the last few years, India's public and private sectors have produced AI-powered tools that improve the delivery of health and security services and impacts millions of lives across the country. As organizations, Puneet, I want to understand from you, how can we upskill employees to prepare for market and economy macro changes? And how has AI influenced the skill demand?
Okay, thanks, Ravi, for that. So I take that as there are 2 questions in there, right? So the first one I'm going to look at is how can we upskill employees to prepare for the market? There's just not one thing we need to go do out there that's going to help employees. There are a couple of things that come to my mind, at least. Learning and development, right? Like, I think the conscious effort to invest in oneself, this is not just on the organization. I think it's both, the employer and the employee. It's very important that you invest in learning and development, right? Like if it's AI, at least get the basics, at least understand the basics. So you feel like you can participate in conversations and have those discussions, but invest in yourself, right? From that perspective, I think learning and development is very important. I also don't think that it's about, hey, I've learned this new technology, it's not just about that, right? When you're thinking of, preparing yourself for the market, it's a lot of things, right? It's about, hey, should I explore job rotations within the organization? Should I just expose myself to more areas within the organization so that it enriches the information I have, enhances the knowledge that I have, enhances your experience? So I would think there's learning, there's development. You should explore job rotations. Don't be hesitant and say, you've mastered an area, you're really doing well. It's a very, very, comfort zone in a certain sense. But don't be hesitant to explore, right? Because that's going to help you understand various aspects of the business and areas of the company. Try to enrich the job experience of the job that you have in hand, right? Like, what can you do better? How can you make the job that you have in hand, how can you enrich that? focus on those areas as well. The other thing that I think one should look at is your peer coaching and mentoring. Nothing like talking to someone else about what they're doing. If you're interested, not interested, but just have those conversations, right? Coaching, mentoring sessions. Sounds like sometimes it feels like, you're hesitant to kind of get into those sessions, but I think just having those conversations can open up new doors, open up conversations, just enrich you in terms of knowledge as well. So when I'm thinking of how do I upskill, when I think of myself, really, when I think of upskilling myself for the market, like Gen AI is something we're talking about. We're talking about Gen AI, we're talking about AI, even within analytics, right? Just being able to have the basic information, the knowledge to then say, hey, do I want to explore this further? Do I want to get understanding of this more? And that I think is very important. So it's not about just picking up a new technology and just learning it and saying, yes, I've mastered this technology, but I think it's about just making sure you're opening doors to having conversations, experiences, and enriching the knowledge that, you've held for so many years. That's what I think, one could do to upskill themselves to get more market ready or, with the changing macro economics. Your second part of the question was focused on AI. And analytics, for example, like in our world, we're constantly talking about Gen AI, predictive analytics. All of that is just based on the underlying. We have like a fantastic AI team within analytics that, generates great models for us. But I'll also tap into what Nishar said, right? We're not going to just pick up the technology and say, hey, you know what, everyone's exploring AI, let's plug it in, let's get everything done, right? We're going to make sure we apply it where it's needed, right? You want to make sure you take AI. So to your second question, has it changed the skill demand? I think what AI can do for us now is actually boost productivity to a certain extent, right? Help us make some of those decisions that maybe we're not able to make it, for example, within the analytics from prescriptive to predictive analytics, right? So it helps us make those decisions. So I feel like it's going to help, increase productivity. It may be able to take on a lot of those repeat tasks, that, one is doing, but what it's not going to be able to take away is the emphasis that we even more need to have on our soft skills. So it may be able to like focus on some of those hard, professional skills that we need on those repeat tasks. But I think what's going to be even more important is focusing on our soft skills, focusing on, where do you need to implement? It's not going to, you won't be able to just plug it into every aspect. There are certain aspects where I think there's going to be advantage. And I think identifying those areas where, AI can actually help boost our productivity, boost our chances of making better decisions. That's where we should look at it. Has it changed our skill set? I think I wouldn't say change skill set, but I think it's something that, all of us probably, I wouldn't say all of us again, right? I'd say it's an area that is gaining a lot of momentum. And I think just understanding it before you apply is going to be really, really important, because I don't believe that it's going to be replacing a lot of the tasks that, where you'd really need human interface, human, involvement. It's not going to be able to do all of that. But I think you need to be very careful about where you're applying it and what benefits that it's going to generate for you. So that would
Absolutely.
be my thoughts on, AI.
Yeah, and I think brilliant point, Puneet, that you brought up. No information is useless information in today's day and age. So it's not about being, okay, I'm going to take a course or I'm going to do like XYZ things to learn about a skill, and then I can be called an upskilled person. It's also about these small snippets of information that keep coming to us through these informal interactions, mentorship, peer networking, like you mentioned. All of this contributes to our understanding of the bigger picture at the end of the day. And then it's about, okay, exploring, can I become an expert in this particular scenario? And how do I navigate further if there is an interest there? So I think really important point that a lot of us tend to, when we think about upskilling, we don't necessarily think of the softer nuances of it. I think I want to pull in Nishar, you on the conversation of upskilling. The way we define the workplace, the way we look at the workplace has changed dramatically with hybrid working and the future of work coming in. Just like Puneet mentioned, there was a phase of change that she had to go through as well from an analytics perspective. AI is now coming in. I'd love to hear your perspective of what was the kind of upskilling that you had to go through to be able to adapt to this new world of work post the pandemic.
Firstly, I second everything Puneet said, right? Every bit of it. And it felt like you're stealing words from my mind straight there. The thing which I would add to what she was saying is something I learned over the last 3 years is whatever you do, do it with intention, right? Have a purpose. If you don't have a purpose, don't even bother. And that's something which I learned it hard way in many ways, right? But that becomes very, very important when it's helpful for others who you're not only upskilling yourself, but you're upskilling your group, your whole team, right? Because you're organizing not only yourself, but you're helping organize others' thoughts as well. So that's something which I would definitely recommend to all those who are listening. The other thing which I would say in terms of approach is I'm a big believer of evidence-based approach, right? Do a finding, do your homework, get your analytics right, and then do the approach and move in the right direction. That'll really save you not only time, but energy and effort as well, and help you gain right insights. So those are two things which I would recommend in terms of which helped me moving in this last 3 years, because things were changing constantly. But what I had was my evidence, which I have been working on from past, right? So I would keep that as my support and then make a next move with purpose and with intention. And it really made this journey a little bit smoother for me.
Absolutely. I think, again, tremendous amount of unlearning and relearning that happened, but it also, what you mentioned goes to show that certain skills that you gain through the upskilling efforts, they transcend across industries, across jobs, across circumstances. There are a lot of professional skills that you can gain, which you can then pick and implement in whatever phase of your career you are in currently. I'm sure we've all learned those skills along the way, and they help us in whatever role that we play. Thanks so much, Nishad, for sharing. I know there is a Q&A. We have some time for questions as well. So if there are any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat or wherever you're watching this conversation. We have one question that's come in, and Puneet, maybe you can take that. There is a distinction between data analytics and data science, but sometimes it can get very blurry and confusing. Can you, in a nutshell, explain to us what the difference between the two is?
Sure, great question. And I think I'm just going to talk about the way we've set ourselves up within analytics, right? And where data science fits in. So within ServiceNow, we've got our analytics organization, and you have multiple streams within that are sales analytics, finance analytics, marketing, product, multiple, areas within analytics. But what horizontals us all is our data science team, right? And the data science team actually sits within the analytics organization at ServiceNow. But what it does is it tries to connect things within a marketing lead to a sales, giving us probabilities to closure. So adding that horizontal layer over all things, I think analytics is what data science does, right? Because you want to connect to a marketing to a sales, and then you want to do post-sales, and then you want to say, okay, you've got this marketing lead. What is the probability of closure? That's when data science will jump in, right? So if you think about it, if it's all these verticals, but then data science is our horizontal. Data science can be in any stream, but within the analytics space, we reside that within our analytics organization at ServiceNow, and it forms our horizontal layer. And it's predominantly, from a job perspective, we have data scientists who are very good at, models, which are, basically more predictive analytics, right? Like, what is the prediction? What is actually going to happen? What are they thinking? Basis all the history information that we have, they try to predict for us what's actually going to happen. And that's actually what data science will do versus an analytics team, which will say, okay, this is what you've done, right? This is the number you've closed. This is your marketing lead that you've got. Data science adds to us that predictive layer on top of everything that we know. And that for me is like the distinction between analytics and data science. But I think they have to be coupled together to actually, reap a lot of those benefits. I hope I've answered that question.
Yes, I think pretty effectively, considering I'm not in like tech, but I think I got the distinction between the two. Of course, there are multiple nuances to it, and there's a lot of more complexity that comes into the picture. But I think, absolutely aligned with what you mentioned. I think a couple of other questions that are coming in. One question which is very interesting is about AI ethics, particularly with regard to data privacy and bias in solutions. Maybe let's talk about bias in processes in general. From a workplace strategy perspective, Nishar, I'd love to hear your perspective on anything that we do. It's tend to be riddled with bias, because bias is a very normal, natural thing. It's a very human reaction to the amount of data and information that comes to us. So would love to hear from you, Nishar, what your experience has been on building to negate bias in some of the new initiatives on future of work, and just thinking about that. And then maybe Puneet, you can help us from an AI perspective. What does that look like? What does AI ethics look like? Data privacy, bias in solutioning, what that looks like. So Nishar, I'll hand it over to you first.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And especially we are talking about diversity, equity, inclusion conversation, right? One of the initiative at ServiceNow we have is about Praxis Lab. And that's to create that unbiased learning about how we can break the bias environment, right? And just putting your foot in other shoes to understand how things are from their perspective. So Praxis Lab, again, is a virtual extended reality kind of a platform where we go through the courses, where we learn how we could break biases and what others might have feeling through their own stories and journey. That's one initiative. But just coming back to what we did in Metaverse as well, one of the exercise we did was focused on equity and inclusion exercise as well, where we actually swapped our avatar to completely being something else. So if I'm a brown female, I became a white male, for example, and then try to step into the virtual environment and see how you and others did the same. So we were trying to understand how we could not be judgy and break the bias aspect in having conversations, regardless of what we are speaking, who we are speaking to, and level plane that conversation. And it was a very eye-opening experience for all of us, because it's you in your mind are having a certain perception about yourself, but you don't look the way you do, right? So your confidence level would remain the same, because you know people are not going to judge you on the basis of how you look or how you are presenting yourself. So there was a lot of positive feedback around those. So what I'm trying to get to is the technology could really help you break these biases and level plane everything and give you an equitable experiences. And we try to do that in many ways, will be in our workplaces as well, right? Whether it's about in-person experience when we go to the office, we are making sure that we are always constantly aware of where we are, who we are talking to, and just do your best work with the amazing people you have around you, right? So those are some of the initiatives from the technology perspective I could think of.
Thanks so much, Nishar, for, I think Praxis Lab, like you mentioned, virtual reality can serve a purpose in showing us a different perspective as well. Thanks so much for spreading light on that. Puneet, over to you on AI and ethics.
So I was so engrossed with what Nishar was saying that if you could just repeat what the question is, Surabhi, I'll be.
Yes, absolutely. So the question is wanting to know how ServiceNow addresses AI ethics, particularly with regard to data privacy and bias in some of our solutions.
Okay, so I think with the concept of AI, right? Like the fact is that you're building all of these models with trying to look at, what has happened in the past to predict the future, right? So in a sense, the models is actually going to break the bias that you as, from the outside, you look at for example, you look at a deal and, you have this engagement with a partner or a person that you're engaging with from a sales perspective. The conversation is going in such a good way that you believe that you're going to go close the deal and this is going to happen. And, you're predicting and that's when bias sets in. But when you think of it from an AI perspective, it's so historical based, it's so fact based, it's got all these inputs in output, coming out, right? So in a way, the bias that we're trying to bring in is what AI sort of nullifies to a large extent for us, right? For example, when we're looking at deals that within ServiceNow and we're looking at, say, probability to closure and things like that, when you look at the AI model and when you look at having a conversation with a person and a rep, you might actually see very distinct, different, outlooks to, what's going to happen to that deal. And one of the things we often land ourselves at quarter close and year end and all of that is, what is our prediction from a AI ML perspective versus what what is being entered by our human counterparts and our sales folks and everything else, and saying this is what we're going to close, right? So we're always, at the end of the quarter, we usually have this competition within the organizations. Is ML going to win, or is it actually going to be your projection, which is really around this is what I think is going to happen, right? So in a certain sense, where I'm getting with this is AI sort of already kind of just cuts off the bias that you'd bring to the table. And that is actually a big win for us, right? I think there are certain inputs. I'm not going to say it's bias free, because you're going to have like inputs in, and you're going to have, factors that you play around with a little bit. And that's got the human intervention in there. But largely, I'd say, right, it tries to reduce the bias. I won't say cut the bias. Data privacy and AI ML and, the connection of data privacy, I think from a ServiceNow standard perspective, we're very, very high on our data privacy standards, right? In general, right? Like, I think we abide by everything that government institutions have normed for us. But also, we're very, very protective about our data, even within the organization. So from a data privacy standpoint, we've got our data privacy teams within ServiceNow. But following a large amount of, what should people see, who should see, when should they see, all of that, right? Like, that is very well protected with security that's framed into pretty much every layer of analytics. And I won't just say analytics. I have privy to the analytic world, but I'm going to say this with a lot of confidence that we have this in multiple areas within our businesses too, right? Because there's sometimes that I'm trying to find some information that I'm not able to access, right? Because of security that's been implemented. So I'd say ServiceNow security perspective within analytics, outside analytics, we added to very, very high standards. And that's also because of our security models that we've baked in to protect and preserve our data and ensure that, we're it's actually accessed by the people who need to access it. So that's what I'd say on AI and security.
Absolutely. I think very thorough in terms of, I love your point, Puneet, of AI can be used to our advantage by mitigating bias to a large extent. We're all human. There will be scope for us to learn and grow and do more, but we can use technology to keep us straight, to keep our moral compass straight when it comes to bias and stereotyping and just inclusion at the workplace. So really, really strong point that you made there. Nisha, I'd like to pose the next question to you. Your mention of Praxis Lab seems to have piqued interest in the audience. Our audience members want to know, how will the rise of these remote collaboration tools like virtual reality transform the way work is conducted, particularly in the Indian workplace?
Absolutely. I think great question again. I would take this question as two parts. First one is more on the collaboration tools, right? It's two types of collaboration, I feel. One to build the connections and one to apply your skills on. And I'll break it down. So when we're talking about one to build interpersonal connection, that could be Praxis Lab, Metaverse, all those tools which I just spoke about earlier. But the other one is also like Miro boards, which we are working, mural boards and stuff. And they are very effective collaborative tools. They get a little overwhelming in the beginning because it's a lot to learn right away on the go. But we have been using it at ServiceNow, right? And it's been super effective to kind of collaborate, whether you are sitting in different geographies across the globe or how you're collaborating and presenting your thought process. Everything is not about the end result, right? Process becomes all the more important, especially in our world of technology, where we are trying to define the workflow. So we are using a lot of those kind of tools where Miro boards are super effective. I would also say that from the virtual reality perspective and putting the architect hat and the workplace design hat, we are also thinking of how we could use the VR tool to kind of create VR or virtual or augmented reality, either of those, to bridge the geographical gap between the regions. And when I say that, I'll break it down further to help understand a little bit more. If somebody's sitting in one city of India, let's say Hyderabad, and they don't need to go to Delhi, we could actually virtually create that Delhi office twin the Delhi office in our environment, virtual environment, right? So if there's an orientation, especially from the onboarding orientation, if we are doing the India-wise orientation, they could all virtually meet in the actual Delhi office, which is a twin created in the metaverse. So everybody got to actually experience how exactly our Delhi office might look like or feel like, or you feel like you actually visited the office. Like I mentioned, right? I didn't marshmallow around the fire, but I felt like I did. So it's that angle or those kind of technological support we could take to increase our interpersonal or onboarding or knowledge base or training kind of tools. But at the same time, we could also explore the sustainability angle, right? By not flying from Hyderabad to Delhi, you are saving so much money, carbon footprint, and contributing back to environment, which is really, really needed in today's world. So there are a lot of advantages of how we could use the technology to our advantage. And India as a whole, as a geography, is not small, right? So there is definitely a room to explore these technologies in many which ways.
Absolutely. I think I totally agree with you. India is as diverse and as complex as a country with so many different ways of life, people, thought processes, ideologies, and identities surviving together. Totally. And I love that concept of, the carbon footprint as well. A lot of the ESG conversation is about how do we do our bit towards the environment, towards sustainable business practices. And so VR can be such an amazing tool for us to adopt for that. I think one more question, Puneet, for you. There is a question about how do you see the Indian job market adapting to AI? Now, AI, I understand, is not new, but then would love to hear, as you're a leader in this space, how have you seen the market evolve and adapt, particularly in the IT sector from when AI was introduced and now has become, a major part of some of the innovations that we create?
Yeah, so I mean, I think when you look at it from an AI perspective, I think the discussion that we're having today is an indication that, a lot of us know about AI, want to explore AI, want to understand AI. So I feel like we're very, very adaptive and we're very willing to explore already, right? Like, it's not that we've never used predicted measures before, but I think today we're talking Chat GPT, we want to go and explore. We're talking Gen AI, we want to go and explore. So when I think about, how is India going to, adapt, use AI, I think the exploration within us is going to, enable us to actually go and try and explore. And then, I'm going to connect back to what Nishar said, right? You don't always need to plug and, play, right? You can explore. And I think we're all doing that in different aspects, right? When I'm thinking of India as an as a country, there are large players like ServiceNow and the others, and then there are smaller organizations. But I think everyone is talking Gen AI, everyone's exploring AI, everyone's trying to see how and what benefits they can reap from AI. And there are benefits, right? And there are some good things, there are some things that we might want to just leave aside. But I think as a country, as people within this country, I think all of us by nature would like to try to explore. And I think that exploration and that ability to go there and try is going to allow us to pick what's good and leave what's not really needed, right? And I think that is essentially how I see a lot of us, right? Like you, me, I mean, I'm not a data scientist, but I'm so excited about the world that every time our data scientists, have a prediction that they put out there, you just want to go in and explore and say, hey, how did you do it, right? So I think we're all going to try and explore it in our own ways, and then just take the goods from it and apply it where it's needed. So I think that's what's really going to happen.
Awesome. I think totally agree. We need to be mindful. We need to be watchful while keeping our purpose at our heart. I think lovely way to close the conversation. But I do have one parting question for both of you. At ServiceNow, we say yes to making the world work with us. We say yes to making the world of work better for everyone, for our customers, partners, and for the globe. I want to know from each of you, what are you saying yes to today? It might seem a little vague, but would love to. You both are esteemed leaders in the tech field, in your respective jobs. I'm sure our audience is really, really keen to hear what motivates you, what inspires you to do what you do every single day and excel at it. So maybe Nishar, I don't want to put you on the spot, but what are you saying yes to, Nishar?
I love this question. I love it absolutely, because I think I constantly wake up in the morning and I say yes to that thing, right? I would say, while we are talking about technology and we are in this rush to learn and the life is going with this full speed, right? I say yes to concentrating on well-being as well, not ignoring the well-being part. And that becomes super important for me personally. And I recommend it to everybody. Spend your start of the day and end of the day focusing on the well-being. In between, you spend gaining skills, learning on technology, talking to your teams and everything. But the start and end should be focusing on your well-being. So I say yes to well-being.
Lovely. We should all be saying a lot more yeses to well-being, but really, really amazing response, Nishar. Puneet, over to you. What are you saying yes to?
Just going to say, Nishar, you probably nailed it to one aspect. I was just going to say yes to doing better, right? Whether it's doing better for myself, doing better at work, doing better adapting and learning, but just doing better, right? Just wake up in the morning to just do better. And I was just so excited when Nishar said well-being, because I felt like I should have said well-being and not doing better. But honestly, it's all of that for me is just wake up to do better. And that's what I want to say yes to.
Awesome. Definitely yes to doing better, yes to well-being, yes to inclusion, yes to equity, yes to living our lives, doing our best work, and ensuring that we're carrying people along with each other. I think I'm so happy to hear that a lot of your responses, without saying that it was inclusion-based or without saying that it was equity and it was diversity, a lot of the responses had an underlying feeling of inclusion and for building to be more flexible and to be more inclusive towards different personality groups and persona groups. This was a brilliant conversation. Nishar, Puneet, thank you so much for answering all of my questions amazingly. Thank you for being my partners in this conversation. I had a great time. The audience questions were amazing. So thank you to the audience for patiently tuning in and listening to us. We will have our virtual job fair booth as well. So I would highly encourage, if you're interested to learn more about ServiceNow, do hop on there, meet some of our amazing colleagues there as well, and find out more about some of the jobs that are open with ServiceNow. With that, I will close the session. Thank you so much, everyone. And Meg, back to you.
And there we go. Thank you so much, Surabhi. That was a wonderful chat to get to sit through. I was loving every minute of listening to y'all three talk. So thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise with our audience today. We really appreciate it.